Okay, what's up? I just, you know, thought I'd make a video about kind of my own take on a beginner's guide and a starter guide. Um, as someone who is pretty active, I'm sure you've seen my name before. I'm very active in the Discord and the subreddit, so I figured I would just take my own stab at doing a beginner's guide for players to try and give like a different, you know, different aspect of game economy and the way I understand characters. As someone who does a lot of hypothetical data keeping and just kind of general like record keeping. So, yeah. All right. So the first thing I want to cover here is the rarity breakdown in this game. Um, it might be a little confusing. It's definitely a little confusing, I think, for new players to get a grasp on the way it's structured right now because there's four rarities currently in the game: epic, legendary, mythic, and mythic plus. The problem is there's not a lot in game that distinguishes mythics and mythic pluses, but mythic plus should be considered an entire tier above mythic is something that I don't think is communicated very well. Just because the increase from legendary to mythic is as notable as the increase from mythic to mythic plus, just from pure like stats and numerically. So that's just definitely something I want to drill in as I go over this guide. So yeah, epic characters, not much to talk about. They're just like your fodder, 1 star, just like minions, goons, whatever you want to call them. They're just like not useful. You do have to use 2 goons at least in the final level of one of the game modes, Darkest Timeline. Doesn't really matter. I just use Big Boy, who has like a self-heal taunt, and then I just use the support. And then you put them in the front line, they die first fight, whatever, you just win, go next, doesn't matter. You can just ignore them. You only need 1 copy, then they start giving you ACDC duplicate, or when you pull duplicates of them, they give you ACDC shards, which you use to invest your character's force levels. They're just there to fill up the roster and fill up the summoning pool. Really don't need to talk about them for that long. And then we get into legendaries. Now there's a bit of a divide here because some are very good, some are not so good. Just going quickly, Adam and Catwoman are not good. One of the people I'm close with and I've been working on like tier lists and stuff with is like the #1 Catwoman defender. But he's a brainworm, so don't listen to him. 90% of people should just not invest in Catwoman. She's just not good. So many other characters just do what she does, but better. And then Adam blows himself up at the end. He does. People really undermine his value as like his ability to just survive. And then he does decent damage on ult, but like the fact that he kills himself after doing decent damage, it's just really like he's just not good. Captain Cold is also one of the not great tier. He should on paper be very good. I don't really know why he's not. He does a lot of debuffing. He should be a very good like support for debuffer for the Legion of Doom team, but he just doesn't feel very impactful, and he definitely just gets out paced by the higher rarity versions of the rest of that roster. Another two in that kind of middle tier is Killer Croc and Vixen. Croc is a good tank for early game, but in like the classic like starter team, which in my opinion consists of Killer Croc, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, Mara, and Black Adam. Sorry. He's going to be the first one to get replaced. He's good, don't get me wrong, and he's definitely really good on a full Legion of Doom team for Legendary, but part of his the fact that Guardians are weak, which I'll get into, that's the next topic we'll cover, is classes. He's like a main tank. He just gets outclassed, outdamaged, outlived, whatever. Vixen is in a similar boat where she kind of just exists, and other characters do what she does, but better. Batgirl's just a better version of her. Cyborg's just a better version of her. You know, I mean, Flash is a better version of her. The list goes on. She's fine though. Then we move up a tier. We have Red Hood is kind of alone in this B middle tier. He's good. He just, if you don't have the right team comp, he just dumps himself in the middle of the enemy team when he ults, which does a lot of damage, but then he just dies. So, you know, use them at your own discretion. A lot of people I know, myself included, are very big Red Hood fans. And I will say, don't be completely disappointed because he's not unusable, but he's also not like top tier. Next step up in like the A tier, we have Black Adam. He's definitely good. He would be higher if Sinestro didn't exist yet, but he just fills a slot in your role until you get Sinestro, and then when you get Sinestro, you immediately replace Black Adam with Sinestro because it's just the better version of that character. Yeah. And then moving up to there's like the top three legendary characters. You have Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, and Mara. Green Arrow is just a basic like DPS. Same thing. He is probably gonna get kind of replaced depending on your roster, but a lot of people at high levels do still use him. Wonder Woman is the best tank in the game, the best character that's living. I know a lot of whales keep her at S tier, even like when we introduced the A plus tier when doing our tier list. A lot of like the high level, like late game whales that have everything maxed out kept her at S tier. So she's definitely not to be, I guess underestimated, but like, you know, she's a very good character. She will last you for the duration of the game, at least for now. Same thing with Mara too, surprisingly. Mara's downside is that she literally only heals in her kit. She doesn't really do damage. She doesn't really like her kit is just built around healing and then doing more healing. So, you know, when we get introduced more characters like Deadshot who have healing debuffs and like anti-healing mechanics, she's gonna fall off hard. But for now, she is, I would say, tied for second best healer in the game, or, you know, she's still better than one of the mythic healers. So there's that. Getting into mythic, these are kind of like the step up. They're not rare. They're a step up from rare, but they're not like super, super rare in a sense. So, a lot of the times when you're pulling on banners, you know, you'll get a red. This is what you're gonna, you know, expect most of the time. Yeah, these characters are also just completely spread all over the tier list. There's also just too many, I think, to go over in depth. I'll point out certain ones, like Green Lantern he should kind of be in his own category because only way to get shards of him is by paying, and it's a very steep price, which I'll go over later. But yeah, I wouldn't even consider him. He's technically in his own tier called like Super Whale tier. But yeah, Poison Ivy is a very good Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, Batman, and like Cyborg, I think, are all like very good characters that you want to look out for. Dr. Fate is up there too, but he's not great for combat cycle. So yeah, these are kind of the majority of the roster, and I think they kind of will continue to be the majority of the roster as the game goes on. But yeah, they kind of are just very varied in usability and attainability and just kind of purpose. Alright, so then we get to Mythic Plus, which is like this is the high tier. These are the characters you chase after. Most of these characters I don't envision ever being below an A tier until we get a considerable amount more. All these characters are just good. Even if they're like not like the best stat wise, their stats just scale faster and higher than the other rarities. So long term they will just be better. So the way banners are structured right now is there's one featured Mythic Plus at a time. There's like a week overlap as the banners flip over. Okay. So yeah, Mythic Plus characters in general, best in the game. I will say there is definitely a big difference you will notice when you hit the blue 5-star. I think that's one I've definitely noticed overall, just a massive increase. You typically, okay, the thing about Mythic Pluses that works differently is you'll need one copy of them to get them to 5 stars. So you pull one copy, they're at 0 stars. You pull a second copy, they're at 5 white stars, which means all their skills are unlocked. So the problem is, what that leads to is, I'll flip over to here. Yeah, anyways, long story short, Mythic Plus, best characters in the game. Even though not all of them are out, it's pretty safe to just assume that they're going to be dominant when they release. And I mean, I think the only one who didn't really disrupt any specific meta was Scarecrow. But yeah, most of these characters are dominant. Superman, best character in the game, great in every game mode. Joker, also good in every game mode, great for combat cycle. Zatanna, good for every game mode. Sinestro, fantastic for every single game mode. Yeah, these are the best characters in the game. Alright, so after characters, we can move over to legacy pieces. I'll go over this more, obviously, later, but you can see tank DPS support. That's what these colors mean. You can only equip them to one of the characters under these broader categories. So, like, the Flashbulb Kite can only be equipped on a support or an intimidator. Motor on Smoke Bomb only on a guardian or a warrior. And rifle on the 3 DPS categories. You'll learn more about those later. It's going to be the second half of this video. But just easier to look at for me when I'm going over this stuff. Yeah. So there is a lot of talk about legacy pieces. I know a lot of people have been like, where's that, like, can you guys make a legacy guide? Can you guys make a legacy tier list? Like, legacy, like, the problem is, it's very, I think, straightforward. There's not much nuance to it. But I'll kind of do a rough overview. Epics, you're just going to ignore these. There's not really much reason to use these once you get to a certain level. They're just kind of fodder. You'll max them out pretty quickly from summoning, but whatever. Honestly, same with legendaries. Like, unless you're running 3v3 teams where you need multiple teams built up, it doesn't really matter. For the majority of this game's content, it's just one single battle. So, like, Combat Cycle, Training Simulator, Meta Brawl. You don't need to have a full roster fully equipped, because you can only equip one legacy piece on one character. So, you know, what you're going to have to end up doing is going all the way back to the champion menu, manually switching your legacies depending on what content you're doing. So, like, for example, I just hit blue 5-star with Sinestro, so I was like, oh, I'm going to push in the training simulator mode for Legion of Doom. So I basically went in and unequipped a lot of the legacies I was running on my main roster and switched over to the Legion of Doom characters because I needed it for that game mode. But, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, a lot of the characters just use the exact same legacy pieces, which I'll show you in my other spreadsheet over here on the other one after I just briefly break these down a little more. So yeah, honestly saying, like, epics and legendaries you can kind of just ignore. Doesn't really matter. Legendaries, just throw them on. The only one that matters is Cocoon Gun because it gives you healing up. The other two are kind of bad. And then Gas Derringer is good for just the crit percent it gives you. The other ones don't really matter. They're not super important. You're just going to kind of throw it when you're running stuff like 3v3 or Guardian Challenge. You're just going to throw these on your weaker characters, and it just doesn't really matter as much. They're just stat boosters. But the mythic legacies are where you really start to see difference, because all the mythic legacy pieces have a skill attached to them. So very quickly, I'll just go over this briefly. Amazonian Alloy Shield, that's going to give your tanks extra survivability. It gives them, I forget exactly, but it's just, I think, a defensive men buff, and you're just going to equip that on your best Guardian. So Wonder Woman is usually a good pick for this. When I was pushing Legion of Doom, I put this on Killer Croc because he needed the extra HP. So yeah, that's probably the best for a Guardian that needs to, like, your Guardian that you need to stay alive for whatever reason. Like, I keep Wonder Woman alive because she can give allies shields. and she can stun, which is very good. Whereas Gabriel Horn will go on like your secondary guardian or your secondary warrior. This one basically just increases the attack and or HP. I don't remember. I'll again check in a second when I switch over to the other sheet. But this goes on your not your main tank. Sorry, I'm getting a little technical here, but like it's gonna go on the character that you want is more there to just buff the rest of your team and not tank the majority of the damage. So for example, like the main team I run in Training Simulator is Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, Poison Ivy, Sinestro. I have the Aloe Shield on Wonder Woman because she just needs to live. I have Claws on Superman because I want him to do more damage. So I throw Gabriel Horn on Batman because he doesn't really need anything else, and that will then at least I'm not gonna waste the slot with like a legendary legacy that won't buff the rest of my team, but the Gabriel Horn will buff the rest of my team. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff like that. And then to be honest, I mean, like the real nuance only really comes with the tanks legacy pieces. The rest like don't honestly really matter. Mind Control Hat and Modified Joker Venom, just put that on Joker. Doesn't really help any other support at the moment. You can probably put the one you don't use on Joker on Cyborg, although he won't benefit from the spiritual amp, but he'll benefit from the effect accuracy. Roteblot Duplicate is what most of your supports are going to get. Support is badly in need of a better Mythic Legacy. I think they should honestly rework one of these two, Mind Hat or Joker Venom Grenade, to giving energy up, because supports really need a Mythic piece that gives energy up. Having the reverse of it, just like they don't need it right now, especially because Joker is just gonna get his Mythic Plus Legacy, which we'll cover that in a second. But you don't need to have. The game doesn't need to have two of these. You're either just going to give them, if they're a buffer, they're going to get Robot Duplicate. If they're a healer, they're going to get Purple Ray Radiation, because Purple Ray Radiation gives healing up, which is what you want, obviously. Okay, and then the four DPS legacies are split half and half. Dart with Poison Ivy and Imp Doll are for your spiritual damage dealers. T-Sphere and Tectonic are for your physical damage dealers. T-Sphere is, I think, the better, in my opinion, for the physical ones, because it does crit up. That can go on Green Lantern, or Green Arrow, sorry. That'll do good on Green Arrow. That'll do good on Red Hood if you use him. That's just better for your firepower that want to do crit. And I like running Tectonic Disruptor on Robin or another character that does like AoE damage, because Tectonic Disruptor can inflict bleed, and that's a lot better to get on multiple people. And then honestly, Dart with Poison Ivy, Poison, and Imp Doll, kind of a similar vein with Mind Control Hat and Joker Venom. Just with the roster right now, they don't need, spiritual damage dealers don't need two Mythic Legacy pieces, because as you can see over here, there's only 3 characters that really benefit from these two. 2 of them are Mythic Plus, which means they have their own, or will have their own, unique legacy piece, Mythic Plus legacy piece. So you're kind of just going to give one of these to Black Adam, who is kind of like, it's like doesn't need it, because you're not going to really, if you have Sinestro built up, you're not going to really be using Black Adam in a lot of scenarios. So I don't know, just kind of something that you might want to look at before game goes live, but that's just me rambling. So yeah, pretty simple. This game is deceptively very simple. It's not very complicated. Just read. A lot of this stuff will just make sense. Like, Prometheum Claws is more about doing damage, so that's going to go to your warrior because it does more damage. Like, it's just read and think about it for a second, and I promise you can understand the logic that I'm explaining very quickly. But yeah. Then we're going to get into the last tier here. And technically in game, these aren't even separated, but I separated them because it makes more sense, in my opinion, first of all. Um, these are the quote unquote Mythic Plus legacy pieces. They're technically also just counted as Mythic legacy pieces, but you can only buy them through the shop using Secret Eyes or whatever the eye currency is called. And what makes these so special is they all have character unique skills. So, say the dual katanas, they all match to a Mythic Plus character. And every time a new one releases every time a new Mythic Plus character drops, a new Mythic Plus legacy drops alongside them. So dual katanas goes to Deathstroke, Fool Scepter to Joker, Hammer goes to Harley, which is, I'll mention that in a second. But you know, it's just a way to further increase the power of these characters, and they do also have unique animations, which I think is kind of cool. Like Superman's cape makes Superman's cape in-game glow. Little things. But yeah, I can go over, when I flip over to my other spreadsheet, I'll probably go over like priority you want to focus on these things on, because you do have to it takes a while to get them and then build them up, so you're going to have to be pretty choosy. Okay, so we're flipping over to my main spreadsheet, which is the one I kind of link to a lot of people, and the one I'll probably link in the description. This just breaks down the legacies a bit more, and it's a little easier for me to kind of not just ramble while I was looking at the old one and just kind of guessing what they do. So yeah, here's what I was talking about with, I don't mark them on this one because I literally just came up with the Mythic Plus designation when I was making these for this video. But you'll see like Wand of Magi, Sinister Corpse, blah blah blah. If you scroll over here, they have character specific skills. So when they are equipped to, aside from Harley, when they're equipped to a Mythic Plus character, they get a character specific skill that will buff the character further. So like Sinestro's or Deathstroke's Mythic Plus Legacy. Upon defeating enemy ultimate, gains Funeral for 10 seconds. He restores his HP every time he gets a kill with his ultimate. So, I would say that one's not as good because Deathstroke's, I think in my opinion, his main value is combat cycle, and unless you're going against Merciless, you're not going to be getting a lot of kills because you're just fighting one boss. Joker, increased effect accuracy, which is good. You want that on Joker. And then he gets self-heal. His is fine. I haven't really seen anyone. I only see, even a lot of the whales that have been playing long-term, I think the person I know with the most only has 3 at level 1 right now. So we don't really have a lot of data on this yet because it takes a while to grind up to these. So I don't have much opinion on Jokers. But should be pretty good, giving him self-heal and attack up, or effect accuracy up. So, looking at that. Harley Quinn, increased crit rate. Wake Up Call is one of her skills. So, if I go over to my tab down here, stat effect info, Wake Up Call increases crit damage by X%. So, it just increases crit, which you don't really, I don't know. It's kind of weird that she even has one. She's the only non-Mythic Plus. Aquaman actually did have one in the landscape version of this game, but since the portrait tests, I have not seen it. And Aquaman also got demoted from 40 shard to 10 shard, going into portrait, so that would explain why it's gone. I don't know if it's coming back. This wouldn't be a bad way to like upgrade certain mythic characters in the future, but that's just me hypothesizing. Sinestro Corp Ring increases Spiritual Pen, and then when Sinestro directly kills an enemy, he gets 10 energy, which is very good. Superman's makes him more bulky, which is very good. And then Zatanna's increases Spiritual Pen and then applies Escape Trick, which will do the same thing. We'll go here. Escape Trick. When afflicted with a control, so she gets a cleanse basically, once per battle. So yeah, it applies to every ally gets a chance to be cleansed once. So I think number one is Superman, because Superman's the best character in the game, and Superman's just makes him live longer, which is valuable. Number two is Sinestro, for the same reason that he just does the most damage. So I think it's definitely worth to just get his legacy piece, and build it up as fast as you can. And then Zatanna's is also really good. I do also realize it's not up to date because I don't have, for whatever reason, I'm missing Scarecrows. But I'm gonna pull it in game 1 second. Sinestro's increases physical and spirit. Okay, Scarecrow's just kind of gives himself heal. That's okay. I still think, I don't think it beats out. The Zatanna's is like kind of insanely good. So yeah, I would say number one Superman, just because Superman's so good. Number two Sinestro, number three Zatanna. Obviously though, choose based on your roster. Let's say you're on an older server and you just miss Superman. Obviously don't get his cape if you don't have him. Eyes take long enough to build up. You can definitely generate enough again that if Superman returns, you can worry about his legacy piece then. So yeah. Now, if you want to look at the legacy guide here that I've kind of threw together a while ago, you'll see there's a lot of repeats. Realistically, I should switch these, but like Amazonian alloy shield should be here. Duplication mirror is the worst of the tank kind of mythic pieces. There's a few niche scenarios where like Aquaman, the best equipment for him is Cold Gun, because again, doesn't really make sense being a firepower in my opinion. He kind of loses out from getting like effect accuracy on, say, Mind Control Hat or Modified Joker Grenade. So I just give him Cold Gun because that's the one that increases effect accuracy, and he's the only DPS that really needs that. So there's that. It's just going to be a lot of the same thing. Like, I mean, stuff I already brought up earlier. Your firepowers are going to want crit percent. Your assassins probably going to want Tectonic Disruptor. Like, if people sorry, it's very hard for me to describe this because it just kind of makes sense to me in a way, you know, I don't know, like your healers are all going to get purple ray radiation. I think honestly the lack of variety really helps a lot because it's very straightforward. Warriors want Prometheum Claws. Your main Guardian wants Alloy Shield, and then your backup Warrior wants Gabriel Horn, your backup Tank wants Duplication Mirror, your Firepower wants T-Sphere, your Assassin wants Tectonic, your Magical wants your Sinestro wants Dart with Poison Ivy, and then you give Imp to Black Adam. Your Healer wants Purple Ray Radiation. Joker and Penguin want either Mind Control Hat or Joker Venom, and then Robot Duplicate goes to every other support, and then you just switch it out depending on which team you're using. At the moment, there's no way to like quickly do that, which is kind of unfortunate. We are getting saved team slots, I believe, before launch. It's not in the game right now. You can't like preset a team and then just like plug and play into different game modes. Hopefully, they'll be able to let us, kind of automatically move those legacy pieces around. As long as they're on like different teams, obviously, like I don't know. Hopefully. That's included in there because that will make this a lot easier, and I think it'll make it a lot less stressful on people who you're not really locked. You can't think of legacy pieces as being locked into them in a sense that they have to pretty much constantly be moving around your entire roster. So yeah, I mean I think that's my big note on that. My big takeaway on Legacies is it's pretty straightforward. I'm pretty confident if you just sit down, just read through all the legacy pieces. Shouldn't take long to figure out who they should go on. So yeah, just read. Big takeaway of this video is just read. Very, very helpful. This game is very, very simple at its core. So just read. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to cover here is just kind of a way to break down the different types of characters in the game and the different classes in the game. and I've kind of done that here in this spreadsheet. And it comes from a big background of playing like team-based shooters. Um, like, so there's you'll see the second row here on this spreadsheet. These are the actual classes in the names of the actual classes in row 2. But what I've kind of done is I've grouped them into 3 larger, more, I think, recognizable categories, and then I've given a little brief description of what they do, and I'll obviously go over these a little more in depth because some of them might not make sense to some people, but this is just how I understand it. So as somebody who's played a lot of Overwatch, and also, I mean, like, you know, pretty much like, it's just a very common breakdown is tank, DPS support, or if you're playing like something like Marvel Rivals, Vanguard, Duelist, Strategist, which Strategist is probably a better name for support because you have overlap with supporter, but I know it as support just because, just what I know it as. So, yeah, those are the 3 main categories of characters in this game, and I've listed all the characters under each class under the little description here. So up first we have Guardian. These are going to be your main tanks, which kind of means like they're going to be tanking the damage in a sense. They're not going to do a lot of damage, but they have usually much higher HP, defense. Men is a stat in this game that really matters a lot. These characters aren't really going to do damage, but they're just going to be there to like soak up damage. Like I'll just, briefly go over some of the more important characters that matter here. Bane self-heals, just kind of lives. He gives Arkham allies a buff that basically stops them from being like forcibly knocked back or just like moved around the battlefield. Fate gives full team shields, really good character. Croc does a lot of physical defense down, or he just kind of a general debuffer. Red Robin lowers energy of enemies and is also just kind of a debuffer. Scarecrow, same very similar as Killer Croc, but just step up because he's a higher rare character. Shazam taunts and just kind of eats damage, has an immortality and like a critical health revive. And then Wonder Woman stuns and shields and just kind of lives. So these are going to be like the characters, you're going to need them in the front line. They need to be taking most of the damage. You're not going to want to use them in certain game modes necessarily because, sometimes in game modes like Combat Cycle, losing that damage by throwing one of these guys in is just not worth it. You just want raw damage. So they're good, but not useful in every scenario. And okay, so next we have the Warrior class. Some people like to kind of group them in with DPS. I don't really agree. I don't think that's like an accurate representation of what they are. I think they're definitely meant to be an off tank, which basically means they're more DPS oriented than tanking oriented, but they can still live a lot longer and kind of do better. I've noticed a lot in a lot of games like the warrior class, or like whatever its equivalent is, usually ends up being the strongest class because they kind of just do everything, being able to live for so long and being able to also do a lot of damage, which, I mean, you can kind of see because currently at the moment, Superman is just like the best character in the game by like a considerable margin, in my opinion. Like, honestly, if there's an S tier, he's S plus, and then there's no other character in that S plus category, because he just is literally usable in every single game mode. Just a very good, like very, very good character, but like easily the best character. But yeah, a lot of these characters are more focused on damage, but they have things built into their kit to help them live longer. So like Adam has like dodge increase on one of his skills. Batman has invisibility, and then he lowers attack or something. Catwoman has dodge. Harley has lifesteal. Hawkgirl has stun and debuffs. And then Manhunter is kind of like the spiritual version of Batman. Hawkgirl and Martian Manhunter aren't out, by the way, but when they first introduced the collections feature around late November, all the Mythic Pluses that were not in the game yet, their skills were in there for a bit, so I ended up going in and like writing them down. So, I can show those off a little bit later, but yeah, I do have access to those, and not many people do. Yeah, and then Superman here just kind of really good. He has stuns, he has physical defense down, I think, on one of his skills. Just very good overall. Okay, and then after tanks, we're going to move into the DPS subcategory. It's not really a subcategory, it's kind of like the overarching category. And that's broken down into firepower, magical, and assassin. Um, Firepower is pretty straightforward. It's your physical ranged DPS. So in this game, for those of you who haven't played it yet, um, it's a pretty standard thing you see in a lot of mobile games, but characters either do physical damage or spiritual damage. Physical damage, obviously, punching, kicking, like shooting a gun. Spiritual damage is pretty much entirely if they use magic. At least for right now, that's the real differential. Like I think Martian Manhunter is spiritual, Scarecrow is spiritual, um, Joker is spiritual, Raven does spiritual damage, Fate does spiritual damage, Lantern. So like there's a bit of either energy wielders or magic. Um, so firepower is going to be your physical damage dealers. A lot of these characters are just straight up focused on damage. Aquaman, don't think he should be in this category because it's kind of misleading because he doesn't do a lot of damage. He was an intimidator for the longest time, and that makes a lot of sense because his entire kit is just built around like crowd control and like debuffing. So I don't know why he was made into a firepower. I don't really agree with it, but he's there. He's the only. I think he's definitely the oddball out of this category. You have Deadshot, who just does high single target damage and then reduces healing. These are just, if you notice these weird names like Big Boy, Home Fun, whatever, they're like goons, or like they're just like the epic like fodder 1-star characters. Like you don't really need to care about any of them other than this guy is broken for Darkest Timeline when you need to use goons. He basically completely self heals like 100% on alt, kind of busted. Whatever, I can maybe go over that in a later video if people want my opinion on Darkest Timeline. But okay, going back over here, we have Green Arrow, who does high single target damage, and has a stun. He does AoE damage too, but he just does high damage. Luther honestly could also move over to support category. He does good damage on alt, but his main value is giving Legion of Doom energy restoration. Red Hood, massive AoE damage dealer, and Two-Face is also AoE damage dealer and spiritual damage increase, so he combos really well with Joker, because he makes Joker do more damage, and Joker basically nukes if you manually line the skills up. Yeah, so firepower, it's just gonna be your like physical weapon masters. They're just focused on doing damage. Now, in a similar vein, you have Magic Oil, which is just going to be exact same thing I just explained, but with characters that deal spiritual damage. Not really too much to go over here. Constantine's not out yet, so I don't really have too much to say on him. Sinestro is the second best character in the game, just absolute nuker. And then Black Adam is just budget Sinestro. I think we can kind of just, skim through that one. There's not really too much to talk about with these characters because that roster is so small. And then in a similar vein, the Assassin roster is is really small because at the moment, realistically, it's just Nightwing and Robin, or Deathstroke and Robin, I'm sorry. Nightwing is not out, and this is another one of those, like, 1-star goon characters, so just not even worth talking about. These are, like, your glass cannon physical DPS, so they're not like assassins, but they do they're not like warriors, sorry. They do much higher damage, but have much lower HP, so they're very, like, glass cannon. Get in the back line, do damage, probably die, but, kill, like, the entire backline or something. Nightwing is not out yet. He was one of the best characters in Landscape. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised. I think they're probably going to do something special with him, because there were a lot of Titans in the game that they've slowly been taking out every playtest, basically, like Starfire, Arsenal, Blue Beetle, Beast Boy, just to name a few, just off the top of my head. Were all in the game at some point and got taken out, and they released the Mythic Plus characters in groups of based on their like teams and their tags. So like Superman comes first, and then they do Joker, Scarecrow because they're both on Arkham. Then they do Then they do Legion of Doom. They do Sinestro and or Deathstroke and then Sinestro. And then after that is Justice League Dark with Zatanna and then Constantine. And there's not really like, I mean, they could probably just do Justice League again, and do Martian Manhunters on just Justice League, and then Hawk Girl is Justice League and Birds of Prey. But Nightwing is on Titans and Bat Family, which are two teams that don't have any other Mythic Plus characters in the roster at the moment. So he was always kind of like a standalone character that didn't really fit into the way they were scheduling Mythic Plus character releases. So we'll have to just kind of see. But I think the fact that they have been teasing him a lot already, and like he's already been, I think he's the only Mythic Plus that has been teased and like had skills shown on like the social media without actually, normally they do that before they release the character in Server 200. He got his released when they were rerunning the Superman banner while they were waiting for Zatanna to be ready to go in. So I have a feeling they're gonna do something special with him. So he's not in the game. That was a long ramble about why he's not in the game, but you only have to worry about Deathstroke and Robin, and Robin is fine. Deathstroke, you need to get to like really high star levels, so not, really attainable for most players, mostly just beta win players. Okay, and then we're gonna move on to supporters here. Supporter is kind of split into two categories in the sub. Like we're getting very like split here, but within the role of supporter, there's two different types of supporters because there's a buffer and then there's a healer. Your buffer is going to be increasing stats of your teammates, and healer is obviously going to be healing. So I've split them up into, I've color-coded them a bit further here. This darker purple is for buffers. These characters don't heal, they increase a stat. So like Batgirl increases crit, Flash increases attack, and then gives an ally fully charged energy on an ultimate. Stargirl is a cleanser, and I think physical defense increase. Vixen increases attack, Zatanna increases attack, defense, spiritual attack. Starfire isn't out yet, but she's like a cleanser. I want to say physical. She's a cleanser is her main gimmick, and why she's in the support category. Whereas Green Lantern, Mara, Poison Ivy, and Raven are this more pink color because they heal. Now, as for healers, there's always going to be the debate of, who's the best healer. I mean, it comes up all the time. And, I mean, I have my opinion. It'll vary depending on who you ask. Green Lantern is just the best healer in the game. Not a competition. Problem is he's behind a paywall. So he's not really attainable for the majority of the player base. And like I'm talking like paywall. Like I think to get him to max stars is I think close to $10,000 US, which is absurd. I mean the reasoning behind that is he's supposed to be like the equivalent of like the VIP system, because there's no like VIP system for spenders in this game. I mean, like, okay, sure, but just the fact that he's like substantially the best healer in the game, I think, is kind of annoying. And also, it's Hal Jordan Green Lantern, so it's like a fan favorite, well-known character. It's kind of weird to put him behind a paywall, and such an aggressive paywall at that. But anyways, getting into the rest of them, Mara is one of the first characters you obtain in the game, and for what it's worth, honestly, the three characters you get at the start of the game, Mara, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, are all really good because they all last, like, the majority of, like, they will all last you until endgame. I think Green Arrow gets booted first, but even, like, people choose to just run Mara over Ivy. I run Ivy over Mara just because I didn't invest in Mara as much on my 204 account, my main account. And Ivy has just been doing better. I like having, Ivy can take damage, do damage, and then also still out heals my Mara, who like Mara only heals, whereas Ivy like debuffs like tanks damage with their summons, and then also just heal like full AoE heals regardless of like a little like Mara, they have to be within the circle, whereas Poison Ivy just gets the whole field. And then we get to Raven, who's a bit of bit of a. I would say I think she's comfortably the worst healer. People disagree. I think she's held back by the. She's not bad. I should not. She's not bad. She's still like an A tier character. She's just held back by the fact that she's a single target healer. She does have a good gimmick though, where she can like swap out critical HP allies and make sure they don't die. And then she does spiritual defense decrease, which will be really big for the full Justice League Dark team. But just for right now, she's not a bad character, but she's just the worst healer because she's just stuck being a single target healer. Alright, and then the last subcategory we have under support is Intimidator. Pretty simple. They're just debuffing. That's their main gimmick. Black Canary is a silencer, and she does physical defense down, I believe, on one of her skills. Captain Cold lowers defense. Cyborg lowers defense. Joker applies poison, and just kind of nukes, actually. He's the one kind of odd fit, I would say, into that role. And then Penguin is also just a debuffer. He burns, and he has one more debuff, but it's burn and some other kind of debuff. But yeah, so the Intimidator characters are just going to be... that's their main role, is they're like the antithesis of a support, in a sense, where they're debuffing the other team, and supports are trying to buff their own team. Yeah, so that's kind of it for classes. Alright, and then the last thing I wanted to cover here, kind of beating the curve here, I just wanted to cover the March tier list as one of the people kind of running it, or as the person kind of running it, and at least collecting a lot of the data. Yeah, so this is basically a tier list we put together. We have about a little over a dozen people, I think about 13, 14 total. And it ranges, we're predominantly people on server 204, but a lot of us are either have played on multiple servers or have been playing since the game was in landscape over the summer. So we have a few people who are portrait only, and we have a bunch of different people as far as spending amount. We have a few lower tier whales, some like super whales, and then we have a couple free to play players in here too that have just been playing and been active in the community for a long time. So yeah, we just tried to get as vast of a kind of sense of the game, I guess, as we could get, to try and appeal to the most people possible, since the last tier list we put out was mainly myself, Unstable, Reaper, who's a mod and a higher spender, and Quantum, who's another content creator. Yeah, we got kind of mixed reactions to that one, so we were just like, let's try and get as much input as we possibly can. So we started reaching out to a couple people who are pretty active in the game and that we know, and we put together this tier list using, just have them fill out a Google form and then turn that into like a spreadsheet, pretty simple number. We took the characters were averaged basically between the 13, 14 of us that responded. So yeah. In the top tier there, we're going to have the S tier characters, and I will read off here the kind of prerequisites that the parameters, that we used to, that I gave to all the people who I sent the form out to. I gave them like a list of how the characters should be judged. First of all, this is assuming the characters are fully maxed, fully built up, just kind of fully invested in. We don't really take into account like attainability in a sense. So like you'll see Green Lantern as an S tier, but as I've mentioned previously, he's behind a paywall, so it's really not recommended for most of the player base to go after him. So we just this is for all game modes, for assuming every character is built to the max potential. This is where we ended up ranking them, and I'll try and give a little insight into why they were placed there too, but we'll just kind of go over it. So first we have S tier. That's pretty straightforward. S tier is just going to be must build. They're pretty much used in every game mode. Superman and Sinestro, very straightforward. Just do a lot of damage. Superman just lives. Useful in basic, just straight up no contest every single game mode. Sinestro, pretty much same thing, honestly. He just doesn't have as much HP, but he does maybe more damage, because Superman basically just nukes one target, whereas Sinestro does a lot of damage to multiple targets. So, both very high damage dealers. Joker too is also a very high damage dealer, but he kind of loses a little bit of his value outside of combat cycle. Not much. He's not enough that he was worth dropping to A plus. But combat cycle is kind of his main value, his main where he does the most damage. Yeah, Green Lantern S tier. He's the best support because his thing is that any time he over heals, the percentage that would have been over. So say your unit is at 95 HP, he heals, your unit would be at 110% HP. That extra HP is converted into shields, which is what his real value comes from. And he's a stun on his first skill, which is pretty good. And he's he just kind of has he's everything you would want in a healer. So I guess that's why he's placed up there. Or that is why he's placed up there. Then we have A plus tier. They're just below top tier, still fantastic, but they're held back for one reason or another, be it low rarity or are just outclassed in their niche. So in that case, Harley Quinn is very good, but she's just outclassed by Superman. She just loses that warrior role to Superman. Same thing with White Poison Ivy's an A plus tier over Green Lantern. She just loses that battle at the end of the day. And then Superman, Green Arrow, and Mara, they're the starter 3 legendaries, and they are arguably they're only not S tier just from the sheer from the assumption that all these characters are at red 5-star, fully maxed out. Their stats just won't be able to compare to the Mythic Plus characters, but they're still very, very good. I think I mentioned it earlier, but Wonder Woman is rated very highly by a lot of the late game in the whales. And Zatanna is also a very good support. She's definitely the best support for spiritual damage dealers. There's not very many in the game right now, so she kind of sucks a little bit, or not sucks, sorry. She kind of suffers a little bit, but I think when Constantine drops, we should see her, honestly, going up in value. But yeah, so that's her main value. That's kind of A plus tier. Very good, just for some reason or other held back from S tier. Alright, A tier are, they're not useful in every game mode, but where they can be used, they are very good. They're the best. Now, Scarecrow is here. I'll talk on Scarecrow. I personally have Scarecrow and Deathstroke both up tier. Scarecrow his value kind of comes from his synergy and his debuff spreading. So he allows a lot of debuff spreading and physical defense down with his ultimates, but it's just his skills. His whole kit is just basically built around spreading debuffs. But his main value comes from the fact that he's on both Legion of Doom and Arkham Most Wanted. He can synergize those teams together and really help players build what I think will be one of the best teams for last a while. You have Scarecrow in the front line, and then your other your slot 2 is a little more variable, but the core of the team is going to be Scarecrow, Two-Face, Joker for combat cycle at least. That triple combo is just stupid. And then what that lets you do is you can throw Deathstroke in that front slot and then Sinestro or Lex in that back slot. Lex is just if you don't have Sinestro or Deathstroke. He'll act as like a secondary support for your Legion of Doom characters once you have him at 5 white stars at least. He'll just basically give energy up, and then it triggers the Legion of Doom synergy tag, which provides energy restoration up, which basically just lets Sinestro just rip off ultimates. And the Two-Face Joker combo is very, very good because Two-Face can AoE give spiritual damage increased to enemies, and then Joker just nukes them. So that combo is very good for combat cycle, and that's why a lot of the characters got pushed up a little bit. But yeah, so Scarecrow, his main value, he's not going to do damage, and honestly, he's not fantastic as a tank, but his value just comes from his synergy. And I think that's what held him back from A plus tier, is just he doesn't do great damage himself, and he's not even the bulkiest tank that you can get, but he's definitely very good. Deathstroke too, a lot of people probably will see this, at least in the other non 205 server, and kind of question this, because basically every person in like the top, or the vast majority of people in like top 15 on all servers now, use Deathstroke in combat cycle. But the problem is he has to be like at least gold star. So if you want to invest in him and get real value out of him, you have to like, drain your life savings on him because he just needs a lot of stars to really be valuable. Dr. Fate is probably the best Guardian outside of Wonder Woman. His ability to just give full team shields is really good. And he does a decent bit of damage and just has good base bulk. So yeah, Raven I touched on earlier. Only down here because she's a single target support. That holds her back a little bit. Batman also was almost bumped up to A+ tier. He's definitely very good. He was very bad early on in Portrait, and they gave him a very good buff and helped him a lot. And he's become actually able. He basically would just explode. He had no survivability, but his survivability is really good now. Aquaman is very good, but his main value comes from Training Simulator. He might have been a little overrated, honestly. Like, I was originally pretty high on him, but I think he probably could have gone down a tier. He just kind of has his niche of Training Simulator and being able to like move people around and kind of stall. So yeah, he's good. Shouldn't be a firepower. I still don't understand why he's a firepower, but he's okay. Probably the weakest in A tier. And then Black Adam, same thing. He just gets kind of outclassed, but he's definitely good. He's very good for an early game legendary, just a solid overall character. Shazam is in B tier. He's good for the purpose of he's pretty key in the good old just puppy guard Superman comp, which it looks like Shazam, Wonder Woman frontline, you put Superman in the back line, and then you do Green Lantern and Flash, and that just keeps your Superman alive and lets him just fling off ultimates and one-shot people. But a very high investment comp, but it definitely does pay off because they are definitely it's a very good comp to run for Training Simulator. Robin is kind of just budget Deathstroke, just does the exact same thing but slightly worse, so he's in B tier. Two-Face, arguably almost went up a tier, or could have been up a tier, was almost up a tier, but his value just comes from being able to let Joker, he acts more as a intimidator than a DPS in a lot of cases, because he just does the spiritual defense decrease on enemies, so that's his value. Same with Lex Luthor, less of a firepower, more of a support. Gives energy restoration to Legion of Doom, and does pretty good damage on his ultimate too. Cyborg's main value also comes from being able to debuff bosses and make Superman deal more damage. One thing to point out is he does do physical defense decrease, so don't use him with Joker or Scarecrow. It's like not or Joker or Sinestro, sorry. Not really worth it because his ultimate decreases physical damage or physical defense. So Batgirl is going to give crit up, which is probably going to be good when Nightwing comes around. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Batman, Batgirl, Nightwing stuff coming around when Nightwing gets out for combat cycle, which could see her go up a tier. But for now, I mean, she's kind of fine. I mean, she's like fine. She's not great. She's not terrible. She's a good support. Same with Flash. Flash is just a good support. His value comes from his ultimate basically lets anyone on your team uses their ultimate again. It basically fills their energy up to 100. But his issue is he goes to the front line and then often ends up dying really early on. So he's kind of held back a little bit there. Red Hood, I touched on him earlier. Does a lot of damage, but just kind of when he ults, he dumps himself in the middle of the enemy team and explodes. So he's good, but not great. Bane, he just lives. That's kind of his thing. He doesn't really do damage. Doesn't really. He just lives. So I think he wasn't really worth putting up above C tier. I don't really see anyone using him outside of Arkham Training Simulator. There's not much purpose. He just is there. Same with Red Robin. I think the biggest issue with Guardians is, at the moment at least, it just feels like they don't have much impact outside of just living. And they all kind of feel the same in the sense that their like secondary effects don't feel as valuable, yet, at least for the majority of the player base. So we'll have to give them a little bit more time to cook. But yeah, Red Robin's energy decrease doesn't feel very impactful at the moment. I think Deadshot is good, but just being held back by the lack of a team he has. Since he's only on Suicide Squad, and Suicide Squad right now is just Harley and Killer Croc. So they really need some more teammates soon to make that a viable comp, and I think Deadshot could pretty comfortably move up to B tier because he does good damage, and I think the healing down will be an interesting thing to mess around with depending on the rest of Suicide Squad, which has a lot of options just from how popular Suicide Squad is. So I do see him going up, honestly. Penguin just kind of loses a slot because like even on a full Arkham team, you're only using him if you don't have one of the other characters because like the main Arkham team, the ideal Arkham team is probably something like Scarecrow, Bane, Frontline. Excuse me, sorry. And then your backline is Two-Face, Poison Ivy, and Joker, and then you can swap out one of that backline for Catwoman, who's honestly, even though she's in a lower tier, she's more useful in the Arkham team than Penguin. Penguin just always feels like budget Two-Face, and he just feels like he doesn't have as much impact as Two-Face. So I think he just kind of lost his value. I mean, he does good damage. I mean, he does fine damage. I mean, he's not bad. He's just not good, you know? I touched on a lot of the legendaries again. I don't really think I need to go over them anymore. But then moving down to D tier. Honestly, I think unfortunately for us, right after we put out this tier list, a lot of people seem to kind of figure out how to read and realize that Stargirl is actually like very good for certain CC bosses. So like I think she has a niche and has an argument to be in C tier because she counters Drowned pretty hard with her debuff cleanse on her ultimate, and then she also can be good for Murder Machine, another one of the combat cycle bosses. And then as Quantum's pointed out, like ad nauseum, she will be a hard counter for like an Arkham team, or at least like the Scarecrow, especially in PvP, because she can she can cleanse her entire team from debuffs. But I don't know, she's just not great. She was a legendary before. I think she could have stayed legendary 100%. She doesn't really feel super impactful as a mythic. And then Canary, I think, is probably the one deserving of it the most. She's just kind of underwhelming. She's a silence. It just doesn't feel very good right now. Birds of Prey, I think, once Hawk Girl comes out, I'm sure Birds of Prey will see a little more viability. You'll run like Hawk Girl, Harley Quinn, Ivy, and then like Canary, Catwoman, Canary, Vixen. I don't know. Canary's just not great. She's fine. The problem is none of these characters are like terrible. It's just characters are just obviously better, and they have like I don't know, at least Adam, Catwoman, and Canary don't really have like a solid niche. I think is why they're in D tier. The other characters at least have some kind of niche. Problem is the characters in D tier, other characters just do their niche better. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that briefly because I was heavily involved in the process of making this, and I don't know if anyone's really talked about it yet. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of just it. I might make some more videos. I think I might do one on picking which characters to focus in the bleed, but we don't know if 206 or the new server at global launch, if it's going to have the 205 4 characters featured, or if it's going to follow 200 through 204's single focus bleed. So we'll have to wait and see. I just want to get a video out because I think I have an interesting way of kind of understanding things, and I haven't really seen anyone else explain it in a sense, and I think it could be valuable to a lot of players to help understand the core game for people who are either about to play or already playing. So yeah, that's kind of it. I'll catch you guys later.